In the cold silence beyond Kepler 442, a crimson pulse whispered across the stars, an ancient frequency long thought forgotten. It wasn't meant for warlords or conquerors, it was meant for guardians, but the galaxy had no such protectors left until it reached Earth. Born of storms, shaped by a savage planet, humanity heard the call and answered not with hesitation, but with steel. Led by veterans, thinkers, and warriors forged in the furnace of Earth's chaos, the fleet of Deathworlders surged through the void. Not for conquest, not for glory, but because someone somewhere cried for help, and when Deathworlders rise, the universe learns to tremble. This is the story of humanity's defiance in the face of extinction. This is the moment the galaxy discovered what it means to awaken the children of a death world. The silent patrol captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Stormbreaker, watching the endless void through the reinforced viewport. Her weathered hands gripped the command rail as she observed her crew working quietly at their stations. The Deep Space Patrol had been routine for 3 weeks, monitoring the shipping lanes near the Kepler 442 system, where pirates sometimes tried to ambush cargo vessels. Sarah was a veteran officer who had earned her command through years of fighting asteroid miners turned raiders and hostile corporations trying to claim territory in the outer systems. The bridge hummed with the soft sounds of electronic systems and life support. Lieutenant Maya Patel sat at the navigation console, her dark eyes scanning star charts and sensor readings. She was the youngest officer on the bridge, but possessed an analytical mind that could spot patterns others missed. Dr. Alex Chun worked at the communication station, his cybernetic hearing implants allowing him to monitor dozens of radio frequencies simultaneously. He had lost his natural hearing in an industrial accident years ago, but the replacement technology made him the finest listener in the human fleet. Commander Jake Rodriguez patrolled the bridge with the careful attention of a predator watching for threats. His muscular frame and numerous scars told the story of someone who had fought in ground battles across a dozen worlds. As head of security, he never fully relaxed, even during peaceful patrol missions. The crew respected him because he had proven time and again that he would risk his life to protect theirs. The ancient Signal DR. Chin suddenly straightened in his chair, his implants glowing brighter as they processed an unusual transmission. His fingers moved rapidly across his console, while his enhanced hearing focused on something that normal human ears could never detect. The signal was coming from deep space, far beyond any known civilization or trading route. "Captain, I'm detecting something strange," Chin announced, his voice tight with concentration. "There's a transmission on frequency 847.3, but that wavelength hasn't been used for communication in over 300 years. Sarah moved to his station, her command experience telling her that unusual signals often meant trouble. "What kind of transmission, Doctor?" Chin closed his eyes and listened to the alien sounds flowing through his cybernetic systems. The signal was weak and distorted by its journey through space, but there was definitely intelligence behind it. It appears to be some form of distress call, but the language is completely unknown. The mathematical patterns suggest high intelligence, possibly more advanced than human civilization. Maya looked up from her navigation console with curiosity in her young face. "Captain, the signal is coming from the direction of the Veil Nebula, approximately 12 light-years from our current position. That region is supposed to be uninhabited." Rodriguez stepped closer to the group, his warrior instincts sensing potential danger. Could it be a trap? Pirates have used fake distress calls before to lure ships into ambushes. Chin shook his head while continuing to analyze the signal. The complexity is far beyond anything pirates could create. This transmission contains mathematical proofs and scientific data that would require an advanced civilization to produce. Someone is definitely calling for help. Breaking the code for the next 6 hours, Dr. Chun worked tirelessly to decode the alien transmission. He used every linguistic program in the ship's computer, compared the signal to known alien languages, and applied mathematical analysis to find patterns in the message. Sarah ordered the ship to hold position while her communications expert worked on what might be first contact with a new species. The breakthrough came when Chen realized the aliens were using prime numbers as a foundation for their language. Once he understood their mathematical base, the rest of the translation began to fall into place. The message was desperate and filled with terror, even though the specific words were still unclear. "Captain, I've got a partial translation," Chen announced, his face pale with worry. The beings sending this call themselves the Valorans. They're a peaceful species that trades between star systems, similar to merchant vessels in human space. But something is attacking their home worlds. Sarah felt her stomach tighten as she listened to the fear in Chen's voice. First contact with aliens was supposed to be a moment of celebration and wonder, but this message carried only desperation and death. "What's attacking them, Doctor?" Chen's hands trembled slightly as he read from his translation program. "They call them the Shadow Devourers. According to this message, these creatures have already destroyed 4 Valoran star systems completely. The survivors are begging anyone who receives their transmission to send help before their entire species is exterminated." Maya checked her star charts and felt cold fear creep up her spine. "Captain, the Valoran systems are positioned directly between the Veil Nebula and human space. If something is moving through their territory and destroying everything in its path, it could reach our colonies within days," Rodriguez finished grimly. His military mind was already calculating defensive positions and evacuation routes. The decision Sarah walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars while her mind wrestled with an impossible decision. Earth Command had given her specific orders to patrol the shipping lanes and avoid contact with unknown alien species. First contact protocols required extensive preparation and approval from the highest levels of government. But a desperate species was calling for help, and something powerful enough to destroy entire star systems might threaten human space next. "Chun, how old is this transmission?" "Based on the signal degradation and distance traveled, approximately 8 days, Captain." Sarah felt ice in her veins. 8 days meant the situation was getting worse while they debated what to do. "Can you send a response?" "Yes, ma'am. The transmission includes return frequency information. I can modify our communications array to reach them." Rodriguez stepped beside his captain, understanding the weight of command that she carried. "Sarah, whatever you decide, the crew will follow. But we need to consider that this could be the most important moment in human history." Sarah looked at her officers and saw determination mixed with fear in their faces. They were deep space explorers who had signed up to protect human colonies and explore unknown regions. Now they faced a choice between following orders and potentially saving an entire alien civilization. "Maya, how long to reach the Valoran systems at maximum speed?" 18 hours, Captain." "Chun, send a response to the Valorans. Tell them that humans have received their distress call and are coming to help. Rodriguez, contact the other ships in our patrol fleet and order them to rendezvous at our position immediately." Chun worked rapidly at his console while Rodriguez activated the fleet communication system. Within minutes, the U.S. Stormbreaker was broadcasting humanity's first intentional message to an alien species. Fleet assembly. The response to Sarah's call was immediate and overwhelming. Captain Maria Santos brought her destroyer U.S. Thunder across space at maximum acceleration. Commander David Park altered course with his heavy cruiser U.S. Defiant, abandoning his patrol route to join the mission. Captain Robert Hayes diverted his support vessel U.S. Sanctuary, loaded with medical supplies and engineering equipment. Within 4 hours, 8 human warships had assembled around the Stormbreaker, their crews eager to make history and protect innocent lives. Sarah found herself in command of the largest human fleet ever gathered for a rescue mission. She addressed her expanded crew through the fleet communication system. "People, we're about to make first contact with an alien species that's fighting for its survival. We don't know what we're going to face out there, but we know that innocent beings are dying while we speak. We're going to help them, because that's what humans do when others are in trouble." The fleet turned toward the Veil Nebula and jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity into the unknown. First contact 18 hours later. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valoran system and found themselves looking at a scene of horror that would haunt their dreams forever. Where there should have been a thriving alien civilization, they found only destruction and death floating in the cold vacuum of space. The once beautiful garden world of Valora Prime was now a gray, lifeless rock stripped of every living thing. Massive ship hulks drifted through space like metal tombstones, their elegant curves suggesting a peaceful people who had never expected such violence. Debris fields marked the locations where orbital stations and space cities had been torn apart by something incredibly powerful. "My God," whispered Maya as she stared at the tactical display. "What could do this to an entire planet?" Chen's instruments detected a weak signal coming from behind one of Valora Prime's moons. "Captain, I'm picking up a faint transmission. It's definitely Valoran, and the signal suggests survivors." Sarah felt hope mix with determination as she gave orders to her fleet. "All ships, approach cautiously. We don't know if the attackers are still in the system." They found the survivors hiding in a makeshift shelter constructed from salvaged ship parts. 12 Valoran refugees had managed to escape the destruction of their world and were broadcasting their distress call on every frequency they could access, hoping someone would hear their plea and come to help. The Valorans were tall, graceful beings with elongated limbs and large eyes that reflected intelligence and sadness. Their leader, an elderly individual named Zeftar, could speak broken human language learned from intercepted Earth broadcasts. "Humans," Zeftar said through tears of relief when Sarah and her team boarded the refugee shelter. "You came. We thought no one would hear us." Sarah knelt beside the traumatized alien and spoke with gentle authority. "We heard you, and we're here to help. Can you tell us what attacked your people?" Zeftar's large eyes filled with terror as he described the Shadow Devourers. "They came from the dark between galaxies, ships that are alive, hungry for all life. They eat everything, plants, animals, people, even the soil itself. Our weapons cannot hurt them because they heal too quickly. They consumed 4 of our worlds before we could escape." Chin recorded every word while Rodriguez analyzed the tactical implications. Maya calculated distances and travel times, trying to determine if the Shadow Devourers were moving toward human space. The growing threat as Dr. Chun worked with the Valoran survivors to learn more about their attackers, the scope of the threat became terrifyingly clear. The Shadow Devourers were not a single species, but rather a collective of living starships that consumed organic matter from entire planets. They moved through space like a swarm of cosmic locusts, leaving dead worlds in their wake. "Captain," Maya announced with fear in her voice, "according to Valoran stellar charts, the Shadow Devourers are moving in a direct line toward human space. At their current speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in less than 5 days." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her shoulders. She had made first contact with aliens, but now humanity faced a threat that could destroy every human world in the galaxy. The 8 ships in her small fleet were all that stood between the Shadow Devourers and billions of innocent people. Rodriguez checked his weapon systems and prepared for a battle unlike anything humans had ever fought. "Captain, we need to contact Earth Command immediately. The entire human fleet needs to mobilize for this threat." Sarah nodded and ordered Chun to send a priority transmission to Earth, but she knew it would take days for reinforcements to arrive. The Shadow Devourers would not wait for humanity to prepare its defenses. "All ships prepare for combat operations," Sarah commanded, her voice carrying across the fleet. "We're going to track these Shadow Devourers and find a way to stop them before they reach human space. We might be outnumbered and outgunned, but we're humans from Earth, and we've never backed down from a fight when innocent lives were at stake." The small human fleet formed up around the Valoran survivors and began following the trail of destruction left by the Shadow Devourers. Behind them lay the dead worlds of a peaceful civilization. Ahead waited an enemy that had consumed entire galaxies. But the humans were determined to prove that some species would fight back against the darkness, no matter how terrible the odds appeared. They carried with them the hopes of both their species and the desperate aliens who had called across the void for help. The real battle was about to begin. The hunt begins. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood in the war room aboard the U.S. Stormbreaker, surrounded by holographic displays showing the trail of destruction left by the Shadow Devourers. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb worked at his console, analyzing the strange energy signatures that the alien bioships left behind. Marcus was a brilliant inventor who could build weapons from spare parts and solve engineering problems that stumped entire teams of scientists. His weathered hands moved quickly across the controls as he tried to understand technology that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Sergeant Lisa Chong checked her equipment while briefing her Marine squad on close-quarters combat procedures. She was a compact woman with muscles like steel cables and reflexes that had kept her alive through battles on 6 different worlds. Her job was to lead boarding parties against enemies that might literally try to eat her soldiers alive. The thought would have terrified most people, but Lisa had grown up in the underground cities of Mars where giant tunnel worms hunted humans for food. Dr. Elena Vasquez examined tissue samples that the Valoran survivors had managed to collect from a Shadow Devourer scout ship. She was a xenobiologist who specialized in understanding alien life forms, but these samples defied everything she knew about organic chemistry. Under her microscope, the cells seemed to shift and change like they were still alive, even though they had been separated from the parent organism for days. Cathera, an elderly Valoran who served as a cultural advisor to his people, shared what little knowledge remained about the Shadow Devourers. His species had encountered them before generations ago, but the attacks had been smaller and more isolated. This time, the bioships had come in massive numbers with coordination that suggested intelligence far beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Captain, Dr. Vasquez announced, looking up from her microscope with fascination and horror in her eyes. These tissue samples are unlike anything in our biological databases. The cellular structure can adapt to almost any environment, and it appears to be capable of consuming organic matter at the molecular level. Sarah studied the readings on Vasquez's screen and felt her blood run cold. Are you saying these creatures can literally eat anything alive? More than that, Captain. The samples show evidence of absorbed genetic material from dozens of different species. I think the Shadow Devourers don't just consume other life forms. They incorporate them into their own biology. Marcus looked up from his engineering station with grim understanding. That would explain the energy signatures I'm detecting. These bioships aren't just alive, they're constantly evolving and improving themselves by absorbing the best traits from every species they encounter. Commander Rodriguez entered the war room carrying tactical reports from the scout ships he had sent ahead to track the Shadow Devourer fleet. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he delivered information that would change everything. Captain, our scouts have located the main enemy force. They're moving through the Centauri drift approximately 2 light-years from our position. But the fleet is much larger than we anticipated. Sarah felt her heart sink as Rodriguez activated the tactical display. The hologram showed a swarm of bioships that stretched across several star systems. Each vessel was different, suggesting they had been grown or evolved rather than built in factories. Some resembled massive jellyfish floating through space, while others looked like flying mountains covered with tentacles and feeding organs. How many ships, Commander? Rodriguez's voice was barely above a whisper. Over 3,000 individual bioships, Captain. The largest ones are bigger than our entire fleet combined. The reconnaissance mission, despite the overwhelming odds, Sarah knew they needed more information about their enemy before the main Shadow Devourer fleet reached human space. She authorized a stealth mission using the U.S. Phantom, a prototype reconnaissance vessel equipped with advanced cloaking technology. Lieutenant Commander Tom Bradley volunteered to pilot the dangerous mission. He was a test pilot who had survived crashes that would have killed ordinary humans, and his reflexes were fast enough to outfly most computer-controlled fighters. The Phantom was designed to be invisible to conventional sensors, but no one knew if it could hide from bioships that might detect life signs directly. Dr. Chin accompanied the mission as a communications specialist, hoping to intercept Shadow Devourer transmissions and learn about their command structure. Tech specialist Anna Kim joined the team to operate electronic warfare systems that might disrupt enemy coordination if they were discovered. The Phantom slipped through space like a ghost, using gravitational fields and cosmic radiation to mask its approach toward the Shadow Devourer fleet. Bradley piloted with the skill of someone who understood that one mistake would mean death for his entire team and potentially doom humanity to extinction as they drew closer to the enemy formation. The crew of the Phantom began to understand the true horror of what they faced. The Shadow Devourers had turned the empty space between stars into a feeding ground, consuming asteroids, cosmic dust, and even the sparse organic molecules that drifted through the void. "My God," whispered Anna as she watched her sensors. "They're eating everything. There's no organic matter left in their wake, just empty vacuum." Chun detected communication signals between the bio ships, but the language was unlike anything in human or Valoran databases. The transmissions seemed to pulse with hunger and satisfaction, like the mental communication of predators coordinating a hunt. Bradley guided the Phantom past bio ships the size of cities, each one unique in its horrific beauty. Some had developed armor plating from consumed metals, while others had grown energy weapons that could tear through space itself. The diversity suggested that each bioship specialized in different types of warfare and feeding. First Blood, the reconnaissance mission, discovered that Shadow Devourer scouts were already moving ahead of the main fleet, searching for inhabited worlds to target. 3 bioships had broken away from the main group and were heading directly toward the outer human colonies. Sarah made the difficult decision to intercept the scouts before they could report back to their fleet. She knew that engaging the enemy would reveal humanity's presence, but allowing the scouts to reach populated worlds would result in millions of deaths. The human fleet positioned itself in the asteroid field of the Titan system, using the floating rocks as cover while they prepared for their first battle against an enemy that had never been defeated. Marcus had worked frantically to modify their weapons based on Dr. Vasquez's biological analysis, creating new ammunition designed to disrupt Shadow Devourer cellular structure. All ships, battle stations, Sarah commanded as the enemy scouts entered the system. Remember, these things heal fast, so concentrate your fire and don't give them time to recover. The first Shadow Devourer scout was a creature that looked like a flying coral reef with hundreds of feeding tentacles and sensory organs. It moved through space with the grace of something that had evolved for three-dimensional combat, dodging between asteroids while scanning for prey. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, and space lit up with energy beams and projectiles. The bioship's living armor absorbed much of the damage, but Marcus's modified weapons began to take effect. Sections of the creature's hull started to dissolve as the specially designed ammunition disrupted its cellular bonds. The Shadow Devourer retaliated by extending massive feeding tentacles toward the nearest human ship, attempting to drain energy directly from its power core. Commander Rodriguez led a boarding party of Marines who cut through the tentacles with plasma weapons, severing the bioship's connection before it could complete its feeding process. Sergeant Chong and her squad fought their way into the creature's interior, which was like a living cave system filled with digestive acids and defensive organisms. The Marines wore sealed armor that protected them from the hostile environment, but they could feel the bioship trying to absorb them through their suits. "This thing's interior is like the inside of a stomach," Chong reported as her squad planted explosive charges throughout the creature's nervous system. "It's trying to digest us while we're still alive." The first scout died in an explosion that lit up the asteroid field, but not before it had transmitted a distress signal to the main Shadow Devourer fleet. The second and third scouts proved even more difficult to kill, as they had learned from observing the first battle and adapted their tactics accordingly. Pyrrhic victory after 6 hours of brutal combat, the human fleet had destroyed all 3 Shadow Devourer scouts, but the victory came at a terrible cost. 2 human ships had been severely damaged, and 47 crew members had been killed or wounded. Worse than the casualties was the knowledge that they had faced only the smallest and weakest members of the enemy fleet. Dr. Vasquez analyzed tissue samples from the destroyed bioships and made a discovery that chilled everyone who heard it. Captain, these scouts were reconnaissance units designed for speed and stealth, not combat. The weapons they used against us were improvised from feeding organs. The main fleet will have bioships specifically evolved for warfare. Marcus studied the energy readings from the battle and calculated the firepower that would be needed to destroy larger shadow devourers. Based on our ammunition consumption against the scouts, we would need the entire human military fleet to have a chance against even a small portion of their main force. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet and felt the weight of an impossible situation. In less than 48 hours, thousands of bioships would reach human space with the intention of consuming every living thing they could find. Earth's military fleet was scattered across dozens of star systems, and there was no time to gather enough ships for a conventional defense. Commander Rodriguez brought additional bad news from their attempts to contact Earth Command. Captain, our long-range communications are being jammed by some kind of biological interference. The shadow devourers are preventing us from warning our colonies or requesting reinforcements. Chun analyzed the jamming signals and discovered they were coming from specialized bioships that had spread throughout local space like living communication relays. The enemy isn't just blocking our transmissions, they're studying our technology and learning how to counter it. Kethera shared knowledge from ancient Valoran records that painted an even grimmer picture. My people have legends about the shadow devourers from before our written history. They speak of entire galaxies consumed by the hunger, leaving nothing but empty space where billions of civilizations once thrived. The desperate plan as the human fleet regrouped and tended to their wounded, Sarah gathered her senior officers to develop a strategy that could somehow stop an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. The discussion was heated and desperate as military professionals tried to find a solution to an impossible problem. We can't win a conventional battle, Rodriguez stated bluntly. Even if we had 10 times as many ships, we'd still be overwhelmed by their numbers and biological advantages. Marcus had been working on weapon modifications based on their battle experience. I think I can build something that might give us an edge. The bioships seem to coordinate through some kind of shared consciousness. If we could disrupt that connection, they might lose their ability to work together. Dr. Vasquez supported the theory with her biological analysis. The tissue samples show evidence of neural networks that extend beyond individual bioships. They're not just a fleet, they're like organs in a massive distributed organism. Anna Kim suggested using electronic warfare techniques adapted for biological targets. If their communication system is organic rather than technological, we might be able to create a virus that spreads through their network and causes confusion or paralysis. Sarah listened to the proposals and realized they were talking about the most desperate military operation in human history. They would have to penetrate the enemy fleet, locate their command structure, and deliver a biological weapon while surrounded by thousands of hostile bioships. How long do we have before they reach the first human colony? She asked. Maya checked her calculations one final time. 36 hours, Captain. The outer settlements at Kepler Station will be their first target. Sarah looked around the room at her officers and saw determination mixed with fear in their faces. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried before, a surgical strike against an enemy that had conquered entire galaxies. Begin preparations for Operation Last Stand, Sarah ordered. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it and prove that humans don't give up, no matter how bad the odds look. The crew of the small human fleet began preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of both their species and every other civilization in the galaxy. They carried with them the hopes of billions of innocent lives and the knowledge that failure would mean the end of everything they had sworn to protect. The final Gambit Admiral Victoria Cross materialized on the bridge of the UES Stormbreaker through emergency holographic communication, her stern face showing the strain of coordinating humanity's desperate defense. She had spent 30 years fighting pirates, corporate armies, and hostile aliens, but never against an enemy that could consume entire star systems. Her silver hair and numerous scars told the story of someone who had survived battles that killed most of her contemporaries. Captain Mitchell, Admiral Cross began, her voice carrying across the bridge with military authority. Earth Command has analyzed your reconnaissance data and confirmed our worst fears. The Shadow Devourer main fleet contains bioships larger than our space stations, some capable of consuming entire moons. You're authorized to take any action necessary to prevent them from reaching populated systems. Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Admiral, my fleet consists of 8 ships against over 3,000 enemy vessels. What exactly am I supposed to accomplish? Cross leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. You're going to buy us time, Captain. Every hour you can delay their advance means thousands more civilians evacuated from the outer colonies. The main battle fleet is mobilizing, but we need 72 hours to reach your position. Dr. James Harrison appeared beside Admiral Cross, his wild, gray hair and excited eyes marking him as the type of scientist who thrived under impossible pressure. He had been working around the clock to develop weapons based on the biological samples Sarah's team had collected from destroyed Shadow Devourer scouts. Captain Mitchell, I've created something that might give you an advantage, Harrison announced, holding up a small container that glowed with soft blue light. This biological agent is designed to attack the neural networks that allow Shadow Devourers to coordinate their actions. If you can deliver it to their command organism, it should spread throughout their entire fleet. Marcus Webb studied the weapon specifications that Harrison transmitted to the fleet. Doctor, how are we supposed to get close enough to their command ship to deploy this weapon? Our stealth technology won't work against creatures that can sense life directly. Harrison smiled with the confidence of someone who had solved impossible problems before. That's where human biology gives us an advantage. Shadow Devourers have evolved to consume alien life forms, but they've never encountered species from a death world like Earth. Your metabolisms are so aggressive and your neural activity so chaotic that you might actually confuse their sensory systems. Part 3. Deathworld Fury unleashed the final gambit. Admiral Victoria Cross materialized on the bridge of the U.S. Stormbreaker through emergency holographic communication, her stern face showing the strain of coordinating humanity's desperate defense. She had spent 30 years fighting pirates, corporate armies, and hostile aliens, but never against an enemy that could consume entire star systems. Her silver hair and numerous scars told the story of someone who had survived battles that killed most of her contemporaries. Captain Mitchell, Admiral Cross began, her voice carrying across the bridge with military authority. Earth Command has analyzed your reconnaissance data and confirmed our worst fears. The Shadow Devourer main fleet contains bioships larger than our space stations, some capable of consuming entire moons. You're authorized to take any action necessary to prevent them from reaching populated systems. Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Admiral, my fleet consists of 8 ships against over 3,000 enemy vessels. What exactly am I supposed to accomplish? Cross leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. You're going to buy us time, Captain. Every hour you can delay their advance means thousands more civilians evacuated from the outer colonies. The main battle fleet is mobilizing, but we need 72 hours to reach your position. Dr. James Harrison appeared beside Admiral Cross, his wild gray hair and excited eyes marking him as the type of scientist who thrived under impossible pressure. He had been working around the clock to develop weapons based on the biological samples Sarah's team had collected from destroyed Shadow Devourer scouts. Captain Mitchell, I've created something that might give you an advantage, Harrison announced, holding up a small container that glowed with soft blue light. This biological agent is designed to attack the neural networks that allow Shadow Devourers to coordinate their actions. If you can deliver it to their command organism, it should spread throughout their entire fleet. Marcus Webb studied the weapon specifications that Harrison transmitted to the fleet. Doctor, how are we supposed to get close enough to their command ship to deploy this weapon? Our stealth technology won't work against creatures that can sense life directly. Harrison smiled with the confidence of someone who had solved impossible problems before. That's where human biology gives us an advantage. Shadow devourers have evolved to consume alien life forms, but they've never encountered species from a death world like Earth. Your metabolisms are so aggressive and your neural activity so chaotic that you might actually confuse their sensory systems. Captain Tommy Bulldog Morrison joined the conference from his position aboard the fighter carrier UES Defiant. He was a stocky pilot with reflexes enhanced by combat stimulants and a reputation for surviving impossible odds through sheer stubborn determination. His fighter squadron was volunteer only because everyone knew the mission would be suicide. "Admiral, my boys are ready to fly escort for the infiltration mission. We can't promise to bring everyone home, but we'll make sure Captain Mitchell gets close enough to deploy that bioweapon." Tech specialist Anna Kim had been working with the Valoran survivors to understand Shadow Devourer communication protocols. Her computer skills were enhanced by neural implants that allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds, but even she struggled to comprehend the alien hive mind structure. The enemy command organism appears to be located at the center of their fleet, Anna reported, displaying a three-dimensional tactical map. It's surrounded by defensive bioships and protected by some kind of energy field generated by the smaller vessels. Getting through will require precise timing and a lot of luck. Humanity's last stand, the human fleet positioned itself at the edge of the Proxima system, where gravitational anomalies from a binary star system would provide some cover for their approach. Sarah divided her forces into three groups. Morrison's fighters would create a distraction, the main battle group would engage the enemy perimeter, and a single stealth team would attempt to penetrate the fleet and deliver the bioweapon. Lieutenant Commander Bradley would pilot the UES Phantom on the infiltration mission, accompanied by Sergeant Chang's Marines and Dr. Vasquez to monitor the biological weapon. It was a one-way mission that everyone understood would likely end in death, but the volunteers had grown up on a world where survival required constant fighting against hostile environments and dangerous predators. "All ships, this is Captain Mitchell," Sarah announced over the fleet communication system. "In 1 hour, we're going to engage an enemy that has never been defeated. They've consumed entire galaxies and destroyed civilizations that were millions of years old, but they've never fought humans from Earth." She paused, looking around the bridge at crew members who had volunteered for what might be humanity's final battle. "We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and predators that would terrify these shadow devourers. Today, we show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when their families are threatened." The shadow devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a living nightmare, their bioships blotting out the stars with organic hulls that pulsed with alien life. The command organism at the fleet center was a creature the size of a small planet, its surface covered with sensory organs and communication tentacles that connected to every other vessel in the formation. Morrison led his fighter squadron into the enemy formation like a swarm of metal hornets attacking a hive of alien wasps. "This is Bulldog lead engaging target-rich environment. All pilots, remember your training and watch each other's backs." The fighters were tiny compared to the massive bioships, but their speed and maneuverability allowed them to dart between enemy vessels and strike at vulnerable points. Morrison's pilots had trained for this moment by studying the reconnaissance footage and identifying weak spots in Shadow Devourer anatomy. Target their sensory clusters. Morrison called out as his squadron unleashed their weapons against a bioship that resembled a flying cathedral covered with eyes. Blind them and they can't coordinate their attacks. The infiltration while the main battle raged around the fleet perimeter, Bradley guided the UES Phantom through gaps in the enemy formation using a combination of stealth technology and pure piloting skill. The cramped vessel carried humanity's last hope in the form of Dr. Harrison's biological weapon, but delivering it would require getting inside the command organism itself. Sergeant Chong checked her equipment one final time while her Marines prepared for the most dangerous boarding action in military history. Each soldier carried enough firepower to level a small building, but they knew their weapons might be useless against an enemy that could regenerate from almost any wound. "Remember, people," Chong addressed her squad, "we grew up fighting tunnel worms on Mars and ice serpents on Europa. These shadow devourers might be big, but they bleed just like everything else." Dr. Vasquez monitored the biological weapon and prepared the delivery system that would inject Harrison's creation into the command organism's nervous system. Her hands shook slightly as she worked, not from fear, but from the stimulants that were keeping her alert after days without sleep. Bradley spotted an opening in the defensive formation and pushed the Phantom's engines to maximum power. "Hold on, everyone. We're going through." The stealth ship shot between two massive bioships like a bullet fired through a forest of living trees. Enemy sensors swept the area, but the chaotic energy signatures from the main battle helped mask their approach. Bradley's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge tentacles and defensive weapons that would have destroyed a slower vessel. Inside, the Beast the Command organism's surface was covered with what looked like docking ports for smaller bioships, but Bradley realized they were actually feeding orifices designed to consume captured vessels. He found a damaged section where battle debris had torn through the creature's hide and used it as an entry point. The interior of the command organism was like nothing the humans had ever experienced. Corridors pulsed with bioluminescent light, while organic computers processed information from throughout the Shadow Devourer fleet. The air was thick with spores and chemicals that would have been toxic to most alien species, but the humans' robust immune systems allowed them to function in the hostile environment. Chong led her Marines deeper into the creature while following Dr. Vasquez's directions toward the central nervous system. They encountered defensive organisms along the way, living antibodies the size of attack dogs that tried to eliminate the human intruders like an infection. "These things are fast," one of Chang's Marines reported as he fired at a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a shark. "But they're not used to fighting anything that shoots back." The Marines had trained in Earth's most dangerous environments, from the deep ocean trenches where pressure could crush submarines to the volcanic caves of Iceland where toxic gases killed most life forms. The interior of the Shadow Devourer command organism was hostile, but it was not more dangerous than their home planet, the viral strike DR. Vasquez finally located the central nervous system in a chamber that resembled a cathedral made of living tissue. Thousands of neural pathways converged here, carrying information and commands to every bioship in the fleet. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a biological computer more complex than anything humans had ever imagined. "This is it," Vasquez announced as she prepared the biological weapon for deployment. "Once I inject this virus, it should spread through their entire communication network within minutes." Chong positioned her Marines to defend the chamber while Vasquez worked. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the command organism's immune system responding to their presence with increasing desperation. The injection took only seconds, but the effect was immediate and dramatic. The viral agent spread through the neural networks like fire through dry grass, disrupting the connections that allowed the Shadow Devourers to coordinate their actions. Throughout the fleet, individual bioships suddenly lost contact with their collective consciousness. Some began attacking their neighbors, while others simply stopped moving, confused and disoriented by the sudden silence in their shared minds. Chain reaction, the biological weapon, did more than just disrupt communication. It began freeing the absorbed alien species that had been incorporated into Shadow Devourer biology over the millennia. Dr. Vasquez watched in amazement as alien consciousnesses that had been enslaved for generations suddenly regained their independence. "My God," she whispered, "there are millions of them. Every species the Shadow Devourers ever consumed is still alive inside their bioships." The liberated aliens immediately turned against their former captors with fury born from centuries of enslavement. Bioships began tearing themselves apart as internal rebellions erupted throughout the fleet. The Shadow Devourer's greatest weapon, their ability to absorb and control other life forms, had become their weakness when exposed to humanity's biological warfare. Captain Morrison watched the enemy fleet descend into chaos from his fighter cockpit. Admiral, this is incredible. They're destroying each other faster than we ever could. Sarah coordinated the human fleet's withdrawal as the Shadow Devourer formation collapsed into a massive free-for-all battle between liberated species and their former masters. The sight was both horrible and beautiful. The end of a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. Victory's pricey US Phantom never made it out of the command organism. Bradley Chong and Dr. Vasquez were killed when the creature exploded from internal damage, but their sacrifice had saved billions of lives across the galaxy. Sarah stood on her bridge and watched the aftermath of the battle. The Shadow Devourer fleet had been completely destroyed, but the victory had cost humanity some of its best and bravest people. She thought about the crews who would never see Earth again, and the families who would mourn their losses. Admiral Cross appeared through holographic communication with news that would change everything. Captain Mitchell, long-range sensors are detecting similar bioweapon effects in Shadow Devourer fleets throughout the galaxy. The virus you deployed has somehow spread beyond the system and is liberating enslaved species everywhere. Dr. Harrison's voice joined the conference with excitement barely contained. The neural networks the Shadow Devourers used for coordination also connected their fleets across galactic distances. When we disrupted one fleet, we disrupted them all. New alliances in the weeks that followed, representatives from dozens of liberated alien species traveled to human space to thank the people who had freed them from millennia of slavery. The grateful aliens shared technology and knowledge that advanced human civilization by centuries virtually overnight. Cathera and the surviving Valorans became ambassadors for a new alliance that included every species the Shadow Devourers had ever encountered. They established a galactic council with Earth as its headquarters and humanity as its defenders. Your people have given us something we thought was lost forever, Cathera told Sarah during the alliance ceremony. You gave us hope that evil could be defeated and that good still existed in the universe. Sarah accepted the role of Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Coalition, knowing that humanity's reputation as Deathworld warriors had made them the protectors of countless peaceful civilizations. Epilogue: Guardians of the Galaxy 5 years after the Shadow Devourer War, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the massive space station that served as headquarters for the Galactic Defense Coalition. Around her, representatives from hundreds of species worked together to explore the galaxy and defend against any future threats. Human ships patrolled trade routes that connected dozens of star systems, their crews proud to carry the reputation of the species that had freed the galaxy from its greatest nightmare. Earth's military academies trained officers from alien worlds, teaching them the fighting spirit and determination that came from evolving on a death world. Dr. Chin had developed translation protocols that allowed instant communication between any species in the Alliance. Marcus Webb led engineering teams that combined human creativity with alien technology to build wonders that neither could have achieved alone. The Shadow Devourer threat was gone forever. But humanity had learned that the universe contained both great evil and incredible good. They had chosen to be guardians of the light, protecting those who could not protect themselves and ensuring that freedom would spread to every corner of the galaxy. Sarah looked out at the stars and felt pride in what her species had accomplished. Humans might have evolved on a dangerous world that tried to kill them every day, but that harsh upbringing had created warriors who would never abandon those in need. The galaxy was safer because Deathworlders had heard a cry for help and decided to answer it, no matter the cost.